Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at this Tektronix 575 curve tracer. I met up with a buddy of mine today and I sold him my spare 576 that I had. And he had this 575 he picked up at some point. He never actually attempted to power it on or anything, but he didn't want it anymore after getting the 576. 576 is much more capable, but it's also more complicated. You know, the 575 being mostly all vacuum tube is pretty easy to service, whereas the 576 is transistor and it's a lot more crowded inside the chassis. So anyways, he didn't want this anymore, and I don't really want it either, to be honest with you, because I already have one that's in really nice shape. I have a parts unit out in the garage now from the auction, or garage sale haul I should say, from last week. But this one's in pretty nice shape. It's all complete, and we're going to see if we can get it going, and I'm probably just going to try to move it on more or less as is. Hopefully it doesn't need much, maybe a few capacitors. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around. So this 575 is serial number 6463, so that's about the midpoint in the production run. I know they went up to at least 11,000, and this one has... I'm actually not sure which finish this is considered. I think this is the earlier painted on finish versus the later, which is like some sort of vinyl wrapped aluminum pebble finish. But this finish is in pretty nice shape. They did change that at some point. And if you're curious about all the changes they made during the life of this instrument, you can go to the Tech Wiki page for the 575, and they have a modification summary document that breaks down all the changes by serial number. So first thing we're going to do is take the side covers off, and you just need a flathead screwdriver. These are like more or less quarter turn, or a little bit more than a quarter turn sometimes, screws to release these cams here, and they should just pop off. And here's the right side of the unit. Let's set this down. See, there's quite a few tubes in here. It looks like this has the original capacitors. On my other 575, the only capacitors I really had to replace were these four up front here. And all the tubes look to be in place. We'll have to check them a little closer to make sure none of them have gone to air or anything over the years. Look for any white ones. And with this being an earlier 575, I believe, again, I would have to check the modification summary document, but some of these capacitors that look like paper capacitors may or may not actually be paper capacitors. In my other 575, which is serial number 9000 something, it actually has Mylar capacitors, and I don't recall off the top of my head if these are Mylar or paper. Hopefully they're the Mylar ones. That'd be cool, so we don't have to change any of them. Other than that, this thing's pretty clean. I don't really see anything concerning yet. Let's pop the other side off and see which tube is in this. There was different phosphors you could get on the tube. The standard was P1. Some of them also had P2, which was a longer persistence, and then some also had P31, and they actually changed the standard to P31 later on in the production according to the modification summary document. Alright, let me set this down. Sorry, doing this kind of one-handed here. Here's the other side. Some of the high voltage stuff behind the shield there. Let's take a look at the tube. So it's T0520-31, so this is a P31 phosphor. That's kind of cool. I'm not sure if this was maybe replaced at some point, or if it was ordered with that specific phosphor, because it was always an option as far as I know. I don't think they standardized on it until like serial over 9000. Some of these early guys had germanium rectifier diodes in there. I believe this one would be silicon by this point. You can change it. The fan bushings look okay here, so that's good. They're not rotted, so I don't have to change those. I was able to get some from McMaster Carr for my other 575, but they're kind of pricey because they're shipping. This Variac here for the collector sweep looks good. So this thing looks good. I think I'm just going to go ahead and bring it up on the Variac and see what it does for now. And this is a transistor curve tracer, and it actually has two transistors in it. The rest are vacuum tubes. This actually looks a little bit different than mine, that gold one, that Motorola 2N277. I think on my other one it's a Delco. Definitely wasn't gold colored. And this is a 2N301 over here. So And this one does not have mod 122C, so the collector sweep only goes up to 200 volts, not 400. So that would have been nice, but yeah, and I already actually took the screen off. I didn't really see any phosphor burn there, so hopefully the tube is in nice shape. Anyways, let me get this connected to the dim bulb, and actually I'm not going to use the dim bulb. I'd have to put the big bulbs in there, like the 500 and the 250 watt bulbs. I don't really feel like taking that thing apart, so I'm just going to run it up on the Variac and watch the current draw. Now, there was a couple other things that I thought were interesting about this specific 575 is there's only one handle on the top. Most of them have two handles because this thing weighs a ton. And it also has a fixed power cord with a Heiko bushing there instead of a removable power cord. But it is a 3-wire power cord, so that's good. I'm actually also going to check the fuse to make sure it's the right rating. Looks like it's supposed to have a 4 amp slow blow. Let's see, what is this? Bus MDX4. Alright, we're good. Alright. Okay, well I've got the Variac set to 50 volts for now, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. I see the power indicator came on. I don't see the fan spinning or anything, but I'll go ahead and we'll wait a moment for the filaments to maybe light up. Okay, well I just took a look at the watt meter on the dim bulb tester, and it's drawing about 40 watts, which is okay. I did see some of the filaments lighting up on some of the tubes. I'm going to go ahead and turn the voltage up a bit. Alright, we're at 70 volts now. Let it hang out there for a few minutes. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for now. I actually noticed the fan is seized up. You can feel it buzzing if you put your finger on it, and it's totally stuck. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that. I'm going to go ahead and turn the power off for now. I should have checked that before I tried turning it on, but it didn't hurt anything at this point, so that's just fine. So we just take these two nuts off. I already got the one up top off, and this will allow this filter element out. I'm glad it has the original aluminum mesh filter. So I actually don't remember how I did this on my last one, but we just got to kind of get some oil worked in this fan. I don't remember if I actually took it off the shaft to get in there, or if I just kind of worked it in around the shaft, but I'm just going to use some 3-in-1 oil. I'm sure there's people that have an opinion on how to do it differently, but I just want to get it freed up. Hopefully this will work into the grease that's in there and let it spin a little bit better. Okay, that actually did not take much effort at all, just some oil on the shaft there, and it's spinning nicely now. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it back on. I still got the Variac set to 70 volts. So let me go turn that back on and then flip this guy back on. Alright, and we see the fan spinning now. It's not spinning that fast because we're only at 70 volts out of 120, but it is spinning. So while that's going, I want to actually get my multimeter out and get ready to start checking some of these voltage test points. Let me grab some probes. So on the right side here, there's 3 test points. There's a 100 volt, a 300 volt, and a negative 150 volt. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this in our 100 volt. That's at 45, right? And keep in mind we're at just over a little of the half of the voltage it expects to see. So our 300 is at 150, and our negative 150 is at negative 70. So that's actually pretty good. That's about what I would expect for running this thing at 70 volts. So I'm going to turn this intensity knob down all the way. See, our scale illumination's actually working there. I'm going to go ahead and turn this up to like 90 volts. Alright, I heard the fan pick up. So our 100 volts is climbing. Let me see how much power this is drawing. Okay, so we're at 140 watts right now. This thing does draw a good amount of power just idling. I don't remember exactly how much, but might have expected this to jump up a little bit higher. So our 300 is at 196. Our negative 150 is at negative 94. So our 100 volt, might have expected that to be a little higher, honestly. There's also another test point for the high voltage, which I can't easily get to right now with it being on this cart. It's on the left side. We'll have to use a high voltage probe at some point and test that, but let's give it some more. Alright, so I've got it at about 105 volts right now. I see our 100 volts is at 71. Okay, and we have a trace on the screen. It's not a very good looking trace, but it is something. I'm definitely not expecting to see that. I smell something, but I think it's just very dusty. And that 100 volts still seems low to me. Let's see our 300. 300 is at 226. Negative 150 is at negative 111. So, yeah, we're going to have to clean these switches for sure. Okay. Well, we got something going on there. Definitely some interesting smells. Let me lower this down so you can see the screen better. Let me see how much power it's drawing now. Okay, so we're at about 180 watts. I'm going to give it a little more power. Alright, so we're more or less at 117 volts now. The trace actually looks pretty good. I'm going to grab an NPN transistor of some sort and see if we have anything going on there. What do I got here? So this is set to NPN. Okay, our 100 volts is at 80, so that's still low. And it could be related to resistors or the reference tube. So we're at 250 on the 300, and our negative 150 is at negative 125. So I believe those are derived from the 100 volt reference, so that would probably explain why they're low. So we'll need to figure that out. So I've got a KSC 1845, which is an NPN emitter collector base. So I gotta figure out how to get this in the socket here. So emitter, okay, so we're gonna put it in there like so. Got to do a little lead twist here. Is this socket any good? Okay, well, I think it's in the socket. And we're at 0 to 20 volt range, set to NPN. Repetitive, keep the step selector at 0.01. Steps a second is fine, so let's go ahead and, okay, well, look at that, it's got something. Okay. This is actually pretty darn good, so the step generator is working correctly. I think this is going to fix up nicely. Switches aren't even that dirty. Let me turn the number of steps down. Oh yeah. The switch for the steps a second needs to get cleaned. These switches are always problematic. Alright, that's just the switch. Little deoxit, fix that up pretty good. There's our scale, illumination. Stigmatism pot might need a little cleaning. Yeah, these switches are going to need some work. Well, that is very promising for a first turn on in who knows how many years. Alright, I'm going to get some deoxit on some of these switches and see how it works. Seems to be working pretty well. Obviously still need to adjust the issue with the reference. Not sure, that could be a lot of things. Bad reference tube, bad resistors, it could be a capacitor dragging it down. Put a little contact cleaner and brushed on some deoxit to this steps selection switch, the 120 or 240 switch, and it helped a little bit. Might need a little bit more cleaning. I also noticed the vertical, milliamps per division switch is a little funny, so we're going to have to clean that up too. It's got a bunch of wafers there, but honestly this one is a lot nicer than the other 575 that I had. I really had to get in there and scrub these. They were all black and everything. Now the later ones I guess had gold-plated switches which were better, but this one doesn't. I'm still happy with that though. So yeah, let's take a look at the reference and see if we can figure out what's going on there. Okay, so I've got this 5651 voltage reference tube connected up to the 576. And how do I have this? I have the emitter connection here connected to pin 4 and the collector connected to pin 5. And it's 10 volts per division horizontally and 1 milliamp per division vertically. This tube is supposed to regulate at 84.5 volts or so. So let's see, if you got to go past 100 volts to get it to kind of strike, and then you see it light up. And there's our 3 milliamps. So we're at, so there's 50, 60, 70, 80, 246 at 3 milliamps. So that's actually a pretty healthy 5651 tube. So there's no issue there. I'm going to go ahead and put that back in. And here you can enjoy it glowing for a moment there. This is interesting. So I tested the 5651 in the 576, and I'm getting 100 volts now with the 100 volt test point. I was actually wrong. It's the 150 volts that's adjustable that you set for the reference, and the 100 and 300 are derived from that. So the 300 is now 303, and the negative 150 is negative 152, but after this thing needs to warm up for like a half hour before you even think about touching that, probably more like an hour. So that's interesting. We have there's our trace, and maybe it just needed to be reseated. That's weird. Well, it's not really that weird. I mean, I've seen that quite a bit actually on this old stuff where reseating transistors and tubes and different things makes a huge difference. So, well, that's cool. I'll take it. Hopefully it's consistent. I did spray some CRC quick dry on these switches and they're working a whole lot better. I'm trying to use the deoxit sparingly because it soaks into the phenolic there, and I don't really want to do that. I did that early on when I was new to this type of stuff, and it's definitely not ideal. Since the CRC, or I mean the deoxit, it sticks around. It doesn't evaporate. This thing's actually working really nice. That's pretty cool. It's already looking a whole lot better. This switch needs a little more attention still. That's not bad. Now the question is, will it keep running? If I keep this thing powered on for a few hours, are these capacitors going to give me any trouble? There's a bunch of electrolytics in here. 4 up here, 4 more right there. There's a can there. and there's at least one hanging down from the top there. I don't recall if there's any electrolytics on the bottom side. I don't think there are. I think those are all paper or film caps. Well, we also need to check the high voltage, the negative 1700 volts, so I think we'll do that next. Alright, so I got it powered back on, and I'm just double checking the voltages. So our 100 is at 98.9, our 300 is at 303, and our negative 150 is at negative 152. So now we want to check the CRT voltage, or the negative 1700 volt test point. So what we're going to have to do is get a high voltage probe. I'm going to use this one here. This is a Fluke 80K-6, so it's rated at 6 kV. And I'm going to set the camera down while I connect that up. And the trouble with this probe and this test point is that the tip of the probe is a bit fatter than the test point, but I found there's two ways you can do it. You can flip this thing on the side, and you can take the bottom cover off, then you can get to the test point from underneath. Or you can just kind of jam it in there, and that seems to work pretty good. So they talk about in the manual, it says, at least for when they have you check this negative 1700 volts, they say to turn the intensity fully clockwise and then defocus the screen. Okay, that's interesting. Negative 1.435, so that's negative 1435. That's really low. It should be negative 1700. Yeah, that's not ideal. So we can adjust that with this test point here, or this adjuster here. I wonder why it's so low. There we go. Give it a second to recover. Doesn't seem to want to stay up there. So we might have a problem with that portion of the circuit or the tube. I think there's a 12AU7 in that area. You know what? Looking at that, I'm looking at the tube there, and you can see right through the getter into the filament. It looks like the getter's pretty worn out there. That's the 12AU7. I actually had a problem like this on my other 575 with that 12AU7, so we might need to replace that tube. So I actually got this tube in the TV7 tester, and it's testing pretty strong. So here's the first section. And also, if you test for gas, I'm not going to be able to do that one-handed, but if you test for gas, there's no gas registering either. And if I move it to the other section, it's also very strong. So the minimum good for a 12AU7 is 56. This thing seems rock solid, but yeah, there's like there's almost no getter left in it, so that's odd. And that's in the circuit that regulates the voltage to the CRT. There's another tube in there though. We'll test that as well. That's a I don't remember what it is, 6AQ5 here. Let's check that out. It looks like someone's already been in here and they've labeled many of the tubes. So let's see what this one test says. This one's probably fine too. So the 6AQ5 kind of tests okay. One thing I don't like though is that when you hit the test, it kind of peaks and then drops. So the minimum good for this tube is 46. I really don't like that. I think I'm going to replace it. I know I have a bunch of these. Okay, and here's a new 6AQ5 that I've got, new old stock. Just stays right there. And let's see if I can test for gas. Trying to do this one-handed isn't easy. A little more there. So this is not a gassy tube, so we'll go ahead and get that installed. I think I'm going to put a new 12AU7 in as well, because I really don't like the way that looks. Alright, this is a Canadian-made GE military spec 6189 12AU7. So let's see how this guy tests. Alright, 82 on the first section. And about 79 on the second. That's okay. And as far as gas goes, oh, nothing there. So we're good. I'm gonna go ahead and get this installed and see what happens. Alright, it's back on. We're at negative 1400 volts. I don't have the intensity all the way up, and it's not defocused like they want, but it is now. Still at negative 1400. Let's see if we can adjust this. Alright, so last time it started dropping kind of quickly after we got it to negative 1700. Still there. We're still there. I think that 6AQ5 was bad. Leave it here for a few minutes. I've always kind of been curious about what it means when you test a tube and it falls off like that, but then settles. It still settles at an acceptable value. And I've seen mention in the TV7 in some forums and stuff, people say, you know, sometimes you just gotta press the button for a few seconds until it settles. Okay, but that doesn't quite sound right to me when a new tube out of the box doesn't do that. And I've put some tubes, I've got, you know, the 570 curve tracer over here, which I'm not a tube expert at all, but I've put these in. I have a bunch of 6 DJ8s that do the same thing. I pulled a bunch of 6 DJ8s out of a Tektronix scope, a completely trash scope. Don't worry, I don't go ahead and just pull these things out randomly. And they all did it, so I ended up chucking them because, well, I actually put them in a bag somewhere. I still have them for science, but I didn't like that because new ones didn't do it. So on the other hand, this 12AU7, it tested perfectly, but it does not look good. It looks like there's no getter left at all. So I'm going to add these to the for science bag as well, because this voltage is nice and steady now. Now granted, it could have been something as simple as bad tube socket connection as well, like I saw with the voltage reference maybe. You know, I obviously reseated them as part of this, but I'm not going to put them back in. I've got 2 nice new tubes in there. So let's see if the display looks any better now. It looked pretty good before, honestly, but there's always room for improvement, right? It's quite a bit more voltage. I'll give it a little more bump. Oh. Okay, I'm just going to leave it alone now. So that's cool. And as far as the display goes, I've got the light here in kind of a bad angle now. Let me turn that off. That's nice. Oh, that's bright. Get a little bit of a double peak on the tube. Nothing nearly as bad as that other 575 that had a bad tube. This tube looks like it has plenty of life left in it. I did actually find some burn in. It's really weird. It's in an odd spot. I kind of noticed this when I looked at this when I brought it home, but there's a little right there. So they must have left the dot off. There's another one right there. They must have left the dot over there. I don't know. Maybe they were using this thing in PNP mode more than NPN. But that's kind of an odd spot to leave it. But the starting point in the bottom left and the top right is nice. So anyways, let's see what this thing does. So I've still got the NPN transistor in there. Why am I not seeing anything happening? Oh no, it's set to PNP right now. That would be why. So That display's looking pretty good. Alright, well I think I'm going to end this video here for now. In the next video, we'll talk about calibrating it and I'll run through that process. So, hope you enjoyed that and stay tuned, that'll be coming soon.